Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be talking about the Titan Crayon eating joke tied to autism that has been prevalent in the Destiny community for a while, but has recently been classified as an autistic joke by the original joke maker and was kind of doubled down on by Bungie, who replied to that message and said that they would no longer be pushing this joke forward. And while it wasn't Bungie's intention to tie this joke directly to autism, I feel like there's a lot of inaccuracies and misinformation within this whole story. Now, first and foremost, the original joke was about Marines. In the military, they would talk about Marines as having a perceived lack of knowledge and understanding, which in itself is a horrible joke, and this joke should never be repeated across the board. But I wanted to talk about how inaccurate and how dangerous it is to link this directly to autism. Linking this directly to autism is actually more dangerous than the original joke itself. First and foremost, for people who are returning to the channel or are watching me for the first time, in the last 2 years since I quit YouTube, and I've only just come back in the past week or so, I myself was diagnosed with autism. And for me, it answered a lot of questions, and autism should not be treated like it's a negative, horrible thing, because being diagnosed with autism for me was the best thing that ever happened to my life. You know, it completely changed my perspective on the world. It completely changed how I treated people. You know, it just changed everything about me into the person that I believe I was supposed to be. And that was because I was diagnosed with autism. And there's a lot of stereotypes and discrimination around autism, which kind of holds back people just being accepting of autism, because a lot of these stereotypes are very, very misinformed. And maybe one day I'll go into more depth about these stereotypes and such things. If you think about like Rain Man or Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, you know, people with autism have different traits. If you've met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism, because every single person with autism is completely different, but face their own challenges in their own way due to their own traits. And the discrimination that people face based on stigmas and stereotypes is just horrible. Like, it's heartbreaking. Some of the people that I've worked with, adults that I've worked with, you know, they've had heartbreaking lives because they were diagnosed as autistic when they were young, and they just got absolutely beat down their whole life by people, by jobs, by education, you know, relationships, friendships. You know, it's just, it's terrible. And this joke can kind of fall into that discrimination too, but the key word there is can, because this joke is not 100% an autistic thing, and classifying it as a 100% autistic thing is more dangerous than the original joke, because that then creates judgment and fear and stigma through people witnessing that joke or witnessing, you know, the controversy around it. They then believe that it's 100% an autistic thing to eat crayons, which then seems weird, which then can lead to fear and belief that autistic people are dangerous. Now, it sounds kind of crazy to kind of link one little thing to this general horrible thing of how autistic people are treated, but it is absolutely true. One tiny little thing that it can be tied to autism creates this whole horrible judgment where people will actively avoid people with autism because they've heard an inaccurate and misinformed joke on the internet. So why is this inaccurate? So children with autism, some adults with autism can have this disorder, and I believe there's a study somewhere that autistic children are more likely to have this disorder, but it's not 100% directly an autistic thing. So it is a disorder called PICA, P-I-C-A. I implore you to go and research it if you are interested, because it's actually classified as an eating disorder. Now, what it is that you eat unusual items or items of no nutritional value. So if you think of crayons, for instance, or like gravel, grit, sand, feces, stinging nettles, wood, you know, like these are all things that a lot of people with pica will eat, as well as a whole bunch of other things that I just can't recall off the top of my head. But it is actually an eating disorder tied, you know, to eating things that have no nutritional value. Now, this can exist in autism, but it also exists in other places. People with PTSD, people with trauma, people with OCD. There are people who had head injuries, and after their head injury, they develop pica and, you know, start to eat these unusual things themselves. But I think most most prevalent to a lot of people who, and hopefully this will make you understand a little bit, pregnant women. Now, I'm sure you've heard pregnant women have unusual cravings and sometimes even go as far as to eat those cravings. So, pregnant women have eaten coal in the past, like a lump of coal, and just eaten it. That is pica. So pica doesn't exist solely in autism. It exists everywhere and anyone can have it under various circumstances. And I think that's important to note because, like I said, once you tie it 100% to autism, then it becomes truth and people believe that it is an autistic thing, when realistically it's part of autism, but not directly for everyone. I have never, ever in my life eaten anything unusual other than maybe pineapple on pizza. But sorry, I had to throw a joke in somewhere. But I have never, partaken in eating anything unusual or something that has no nutritional value because I don't have pica, but I do have autism. And I think that distinction needs to be made clear across the board so that people aren't misinformed about this joke. Now, this joke should never, ever, ever be repeated whatsoever. But the problem is once you generalize autism in that way, so like you make this big statement that it is an autistic thing, there are actually autistic people with pica who are then not being represented. They're not being recognized for their challenges with pica because it's just 100% being diagnosed as an autistic thing or classified as an autistic thing. And then those people with pica who are autistic are then neglected and they don't get, I'm trying to think of the word. They just don't get noticed because people just determine everyone in autism to eat crayons instead of what it actually is, and it's pica. And that's a problem. It really is. It creates so much challenges for the autistic community that a lot of people aren't aware of. And I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not blaming the original joke maker. I'm not blaming Bungie. All I'm trying to do is give more accurate information so people can, make a more fair judgment about this joke in general. And I guess that's kind of all I really want to say. I'm probably going to make some more videos down the line about autism, more in-depth stuff and all that. But I just feel like after this last week, when I've kind of got my thoughts together about this joke and been able to structure it into a semi-decent video, I feel like I'd put it out ahead of any other planned autism content because it's important that people know that this joke is not 100% an autistic thing. And saying that it is dangerous to the autistic community, to my community. So anyway, that is all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I've been Easy now, and you guys have been awesome.